Hi, Nadia. Welcome to Lead Time Chats.
Hi, thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah,
Great
I'm
company.
excited. Yeah, I'm super excited to have you, and especially for the topic we're talking about today, which is managing up. And I know as the founder of Real You Leadership, you run a lot of workshops, helping people figure out like what does that mean? How how do you do it? Like what is all involved in managing up, and not just up, but also like across and around and down and all the directions of
hmm
of managing. But maybe just to start off, like, what are the common questions or issues that people have around managing up?
Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing this up. It is our jam in Real You Leadership. And I think a lot of the common questions or challenges people have with managing up, especially in coaching in our business in Real You Leadership, we coach a lot of women of color and other
Mhm.
historically marginalized people that no one ever taught them how to do it before. So they've never seen it done or never seen it done well. And
Mhm.
that can be really challenging when you really do know that you are the first ever to go through this potentially in your family or on your team and navigating the unknown. And I think people don't realize how emotionally charged managing up can feel because you're essentially telling people what you might want in your role, in your career, in your growth, or in a certain project. And that can feel like you're taking up too much space or being too much, or maybe being too um, proud or too arrogant. If, for instance, you're saying, I'm managing up for my next promotion, I deserve more, or I'm managing up for my next level pay and compensation, this is not enough. And it can feel a lot of friction can come up, and we might feel that we might get scared of rejection or retaliation or being told
Mhm.
to that we're being too much or we're not deserving of it, and that can
Mhm.
be very scary because you are essentially venturing into the unknown. And I think a lot of challenges is that people don't realize it's not about demanding, it's about building solid relationships with your manager, your cross-functional stakeholders, whoever it is that you might need a mutually beneficial relationship with. That
Mhm.
is who you're managing up, down, and all around with. So I think people don't realize that it's about being a human and building a relationship.
Yeah, and I think the part you kind of talked about was like managing up for your next promotion or just like advocating
Mhm.
for yourself, telling your manager what you want. But I think like even that, I think when people think managing up, a lot of people just kind of are like, ooh, I know that's like something I'm supposed to do at a certain, at a certain level. I've heard that that's what I'm supposed to do, but they don't even know like what it all entails, like what I mean, there is like kind of advocating for yourself, but there's also just like communicating what your team's doing and like boosting the visibility of your work, like all the things, right? And like
Mhm.
I think just the work that you're doing to kind of demystify some of this is super great, especially people who may be a little bit, yeah, just it's daunting if you've never been taught how to do it.
Yeah, and it can be, and that's the thing, that we don't even know sometimes what we're asking for. We don't even know what we want, or we don't know what's possible. And so I think the biggest thing you can do is be very curious and learn how to ask really great, powerful managing up questions, which tend to be open-ended questions, by asking what's possible with my role, what's possible with advancement, what's possible with growth, what do you want to see from me, right?
Mhm.
Or in order to be, for instance, if you want to manage up and cultivate a path towards your next promotion or your next level role, you might need to start asking these questions, which requires you to build trust and to activate your voice, which is the
Mhm.
advocacy piece, and say, this is what I really want. I want a promotion by this time next year, or I want a promotion, during our next performance review cycle or next advancement cycle that's possible. What do you need to see from me, boss
Mhm.
or manager, to be able to see that I deserve that or that I'm ready for that next level? What are the actual actions that you need to see? How do you need to see me show up on our team as a leader,
Mhm.
etc.? Whether it's hard skills or soft skills, we need to ask for more clarity. And that's part of managing up, so that we know what to do versus guessing what to do. So a lot of
Right.
people, demystifying it, as you said, is we're simply information gathering for a lot of it. And then really designing together commitments that you and whoever you're managing up or around with, or, you know, I heard someone say the term cascading up recently, like, I'm going to cascade this up. And it was a beautiful term. But you know, we don't need to guess what we need to do when we properly learn how to communicate and manage up.
Yeah. One thing I really appreciate around everything that you're saying is that it's definitely not a like one and done conversation of like,
No.
yep, I checked the box. I managed up this quarter, right? It's an ongoing, it's about building the relationship, and not every conversation is going to be like, cool, are we on track for this promotion? Right. It's like it's a very much a two-way street of designing how you want to work together and
Yeah.
checking in and, you know, building trust and all that good stuff.
Yeah, that's true. And that's like any negotiation. So I do leadership and negotiation coaching.
Mhm.
As you know, that's my jam. I love, especially women of color, negotiating for the pay they deserve, the roles and recognition they deserve to close their own pay gaps. But a lot of people don't realize that it is not a one and done conversation. Managing up, negotiating, advocating for yourself is a continuous effort and journey. And it often
Mhm.
is a series of conversations. So get ready to go in the long term. It's almost the term a marathon, not a sprint. So
Mhm.
we want to make sure that we build in for stamina and endurance. And I
Yeah.
think what happens a lot with the emotional charge, we hype ourselves up so much for the very first conversation, not realizing there's
Right.
more to it.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Do you have any, I mean, ideally, right, you talk to your manager, they're a great manager, they're like, yes, you and the company is like super well set up to support you, and like, yes, we need to see more of this, and this. What do you say to folks who maybe their managers are like, ooh, I don't know, like don't really give you a straight answer of like what they need from you?
Yeah. You know, this is where, again, you have to learn how to advocate for the clarity that you need and the
Mhm.
information. If you have a manager that isn't really being clear with you, isn't really giving you what you need to be comfortable naming it and be
Mhm.
courageous and vulnerable to say, hey, I'm asking you for clarity from this is what I'm receiving from you. I'm still unclear. What
Mhm.
else can you give me? What else can I learn? Who else can I ask even? And in
Mhm.
my trainings and workshops and coaching around managing up, we actually keep it very real on what toxic managers might look like. So, in your scenario that you just shared, it could be okay, just a little bit of an absent manager, but
Right.
we work with plenty of people who have managers that ghost them, who have
Mm.
managers that leave them on read and they have to chase and find, who have narcissistic managers, unfortunately, who have managers who can be very reactionary or even steal their ideas. So it can get really complex depending on the manager that you have. Hopefully, you have a healthy one. But
Mhm.
regardless, it's not the end. It's about learning how to work with the manager that you have today in a
Mhm.
way that still serves you, in a way that still is aligned with your values, and you don't feel like you're compromising yourself too
Mhm.
much. So if you can't get the information from your manager, keep trying. Really make it clear when you're not getting what you need. And
Mhm.
always saying, how can I help you help me? Finding ways to say, how can I help you help me help you? Right? Because
Mhm.
that's really what managing up is. It is a mutually beneficial relationship we're creating where I win in my career growth and advancement and my success, my recognition, etc. You win as well in your career and advancement and growth by having a successful team member. And the company we work for wins by all of us operating in a really effective and productive and healthy way. So
Mhm.
when we are thinking about that, always find that angle of what does my manager get out of this that will help them pay attention to me a little bit more and
Mhm.
hopefully meet where we are and design a way forward where we all win if they help me with what I need.
Right. I think it also doesn't have to be very like, I think a way to be a little bit like sneaky about it is just have to be about like as the person kind of managing up, it doesn't you have to feel like it's about me, right? I can be like, what are you concerned about? Like what are, you know, how
Yes.
can I help take something off your plate? Or that can help just build and deepen
Yeah.
that relationship. And I guess one mindset that I've always had in managing up is like, how, like, what do I need to do for this person to think, okay, Jean's got her shit together? Like
Yeah.
that's kind
Yeah.
of my go-to of like, because as a manager, you always have um, there's always people who, if you don't hear from them, it's all good, right? Like you
Yeah.
know that if you don't hear anything for a few days, you assume that everything's good. There's no blockers, like they're not off in the woods doing, God knows what. And then there's people who, if you don't hear from them, you get really concerned, right? And so
Yes.
I think of managing up as sort of like, okay, how do I get myself in that first bucket of like, and really, I think that's what you're speaking
Mm,
to, of like building those layers of that relationship and trust, so that, in the absence of communication, people think, oh, this person, is making good decisions, even though I'm not talking to them all the
right.
time.
Right. So if you feel like you don't have that trust in the first place, get it. I love that you're framing it as, how do I get in that first bucket of no one questions if I've got my shit together or not?
Right.
And that's where you
Right.
always have to advocate for yourself and learn to speak for your work. And if you're not quite getting it directly from your manager, make sure the rest of your team knows. Make sure other cross functional leaders know, because you might be getting your next opportunity or recognition from
Mm,
skip levels, from other teams that might be able to help open doors for you and pathways for you too. It doesn't have to just be with your manager. That's why we say up, down, all around, because you have a
yeah.
whole team of potential advocates and allies and sponsors and mentors there for you available. So don't just stop at your direct manager. Definitely keep working with them, and it can go
Yeah,
beyond that.
that's true. I remember when I was at Medium, I had a period in there that was really hard, where I felt like, how come no one's like recognizing me? Like no one's recognizing
Mm,
my work.
yeah.
And how come no one's offering me, leadership opportunities? And in retrospect, I was like, well, I wasn't speaking up, right? Like
Yeah.
every manager's got like a bunch of direct reports. No one's like, how's Jean been doing? Let me go review her like many
Right.
projects, and like, oh wow, like she's really under recognized. Let me go like fix that, So which, like, saying
That
it
would
out
be the
loud,
dream. That would be the
yeah,
dream.
yeah, saying it out loud sounds like super obvious, but I think, the fear of taking up too much space, the fear of even, thinking,
Yeah.
what do I want, and communicating it kind of held me back from, yeah, it just put me in this place where I was kind of waiting around and then not getting what I wanted. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm
You
glad
know,
you're coaching folks to speak up early.
yeah, and you're not alone in that. And we've seen so many things. We've seen people who don't advocate and speak for their work because they're scared of taking up too much
Mhm.
space. And we've also seen a lot of clients who are in a space of resentment, which is natural when you've been so overlooked or overworked or overwhelmed in any way,
Yeah.
or just have put in the time and truly are a great high achiever or even overachiever, and aren't getting recognized because so many people are too busy. Right? They don't
Hmm.
have, your leaders, your stakeholders, or gatekeepers, whatever you want to call them, might not have the time to literally focus on your work and say, dang, Jean's really been killing it. And I think she's being under recognized. No, you have to
Yeah.
tell them, you have to allow them to see what are your challenges, what are your needs, what are your desires, and what you're capable of by speaking for your work. Where, if anything other than fear, maybe a hard or quote unquote
Mhm.
aggressive anger, resentment, frustration might be there blocking you. We gotta let that go too. So we do a lot of mindset coaching. I am a mindset coach at heart, and those are the mindsets that hold us back as well. And we cannot let, even, there's a lot to be angry about. There's a lot
Mhm.
of systemic bias that and oppression that we experience, especially since I work with women of color. I have to keep that real. There's a lot of inequity, there's a lot of exclusion, there's a lot of bias
Mhm.
and gaslighting and microaggressions that we might experience even in remote work. And we cannot let any resentment stop us from advocating for
Yeah.
ourselves. And we can't fall into the assumption and the myth that our work should speak for ourselves, especially for hyperachievers. No, it does not speak for itself. You gotta speak for your work, period.
Yeah. I particularly like the, up, down, and all around, having just not limiting it to your relationship with your manager, because that relationship could be great, right? But like
Yeah.
a manager is not going to have their eye on everything you do. They're not going to be on top of it all the time because they've got
Mhm.
a ton of other things to do. Um, and it reminds me when we do like an annual goal setting at Range, and one of the things we do after we set the goals is like we have a little table, and it's like, okay, who do you want support from? And it's like, list all the
Mm.
people, because it could be like the PM, right? If an engineer is setting some goals of like, hey, I want to move into this type of direction, maybe they talk to a senior engineer, maybe they talk to the PM. I'm just saying like, hey, this is kind of, this is the direction I want to grow in. Like, just FYI, is there anything that you want to share with me? And then that way, the more people that know like what you're working towards, the better, right? Because, then not everything has to go through your manager.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing where you also don't want all of your advocacy to just be in one place, someone who's sponsoring you, because you never know if your manager might
Yeah.
get a next opportunity outside of your org or outside of your company. Reorgs
Hmm.
happen all the time, and you might get lost in the cracks of that. So,
Yeah.
depending on your company structure, how things change, we've worked with a lot of clients where they made massive strides with their leader, not knowing that
Mm.
their leader was about to put in their 2-week notice, or they were going to go on maternity leave and the interim manager comes in right before performance review cycle. So
Mm.
you need to be able to allow yourself to have the opportunity all around to
Yeah.
advocate and show up.
And also, I mean, I always think of relationships as like, we're going to have long careers, right? Like it's it's going to be over many different companies, like over a few
Yes.
decades. And so you're talking about relationships between humans, but like over many companies. So you might have a peer who you talk to, and I guess people maybe don't like to think of them as like managing a peer, but just like building that relationship with a peer, and then they know, hey, you're really interested in this particular field. They go to a different company, they have something open up, right? Like,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. They bring you in, or maybe your peer becomes your manager or a leader and says, I can bring you up here in this. Or maybe they are an ally that knows, even if that's not something I want, that's something Jean wants, that's something Nadia wants. So I'm going to speak to other people in our company because you
Mhm.
came to mind.
Yeah.
Since I knew that about you, even if I might not have positional power to make something happen, I can at least advocate for you and say, actually, Jean
Right.
is really good at that.
Right.
Right? Or
Yeah.
Jean should be the point person for that because I've seen her do X, Y, and Z, and she's expressed that kind of desire to do this type of work. So it doesn't hurt to always share yourself and create that bond and connection and understanding with your peers too.
Mhm. What about in remote workspaces? Because I know there's a lot of differences. I mean, very basic,
Yeah.
like there's no FaceTime. Like, are you going to go schedule a meeting with someone to be like, hey, let's just chat? Right? So it's a lot less casual time to build those relationships. I'm just curious, what are the challenges you've seen remotely, and maybe specifically for more underrepresented folks as well?
Yeah. So for historically underrepresented and marginalized people, just like, say, women of color, BIPOC women and
Mhm.
femmes that I work with, it can be really challenging and it can be amazing. I've seen
Mm.
it go both ways where they feel safer because they are physically not there, especially if it's predominantly white male workspaces. They've actually seen that in remote work, it's an even playing field all of a
Yeah.
sudden, and they can take up so much more space than if they were in the physical realm. And we really need to understand and unpack that a lot, which we don't got time today, but because they're not navigating bias with their bodies actually being
Yeah.
there. And then also at the same time, some clients have gotten lost in the sauce, and that's why they want to work with us, where they're saying, how can I shine when it is an
Mhm.
even playing field? And I feel like I'm still being overlooked because of who I am, or they're being tone policed by their facial expressions and nothing else. right? Where
Mm.
they're saying, oh, you need to smile more on Zoom. You need to be on Zoom more. You need to, all of these things that might be there. So we still have to advocate for equitable and unbiased feedback. We have to ask for business advice on a regular basis and how our goals can, like you said, tie into our manager's goals, tie into the broader, greater vision of the company and the business goals of the company, and make sure that you're actually aligned with that and being recognized for that. So whether that means hyping yourself up on Slack and saying, yep, I did that, I want to celebrate this, or whether that's someone congratulating you or recognizing you, do not defer that and say, oh, it was a group effort. This is one of the biggest things. Anytime someone hypes you up in Slack or an email, collect it, screenshot it, put it in your praise folder, make sure that's there for when you're about to prepare for like a performance review or something major, so that you actually have receipts. And make sure people recognize that you own it confidently by saying, thank you. I worked really hard on that. Thank you. I appreciate you recognizing that. Thank you. I fully receive that. Because what we do a lot of times, especially women of color, is we defer compliments and we defer recognition. And it can feel so easy on Slack because it's just there. And we can say, oh, it was a group effort. Thanks. But so-and-so did this part of the project, or so-and-so did this. And I got to say, don't take away your shine for anybody. Fully receive it, accept all compliments, accept all praise, and even celebrate yourself and say to your boss in your one-on-ones, hey, this is what I overcame. This was my challenge, and I'm proud that I was able to do this. What else would you have suggested I try out? What's possible from this place? And keep building that momentum upon your current achievements and say, this is what I want to learn. This is what I've already achieved. Language really matters. And say, I want to know this. How can you help me with that? And maybe it's them giving you a resource. Maybe it's them giving you a new mentor. Maybe it's them guiding you towards what it could be like to study under them a little bit more, or learn from them directly a little bit more. But I will say, in remote work, it is still just as imperative as in real life work to know your boss, period. Know their energy level, know when the best time to connect with them is, know how they work, know their communication style, and align yourself with them. If you have an introvert boss, but you're an extrovert, name it with them and be courageous and vulnerable and say, I can tell that we communicate so differently. How can we best communicate together? How can we best disagree together? How can we best move through disagreements and conflict together? Design that plan in advance and say, hey, I want you to know that I want to stay in front of you. I want to make sure that you know what I'm working on. What's the best way to report that to you on a weekly basis? Stay present and say, I'm going to report every Monday morning. I'm going to send you a quick Slack message saying, this is what I'm working on this week. Every Monday morning, I'm going to send you a quick email with at least 3 points of my priorities this week, so you know what I'm working on. Whether or not they reply to it, it's important that you keep putting that proof out there. You keep making that effort of connection. And it's really easy, honestly, with remote work, in my opinion, when you do it that way, because it's just there and say, okay, cool. Team members are good. We're fine. Awesome. I'm going to keep working. Okay, don't have to worry about Jean. She's on it, but I'm still seeing that she's doing something and she's doing it well.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the sort of low trust management of like, ooh, if I can't see people, are they working, right? That I think a lot of companies are kind of trying to get people back into the office, which is also a whole other topic that we don't have time for today.
I'm a big fan of helping my clients negotiate hybrid or remote work when they're being forced to go back to the office.
Yes.
We have a pretty high success rate for that.
Nice. That's amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think one thing I really appreciated is that, when people think about managing up, they often just think of like, oh, that means things I need to say in our one-on-one, right? Like they kind of focus on the like one-on-one, but you're bringing up a lot of different places, whether that's like, when you ship something, post it in Slack, right? Like we have a visible changes channel where people, anything that's visible, you post it in there, people celebrate, right? And then at the end of a cycle, we go through and pull, we celebrate as a team and we give gratitude. And yeah, just like a lot of the stuff can be async, right? Sending that Monday morning Slack message or email to your team of like, hey, here are my priorities this week. It doesn't all have to be one-on-one, face to face, which I know as an introvert can sometimes be like, do I have to?
Right. I'm a bit of both, so I understand. And I even do
Yeah.
that with my team as a business owner and leader, where I say,
Mhm.
"Hey team, what are you working on in our one-on-ones on Monday?
Mhm.
And how can I support you?" And then I will let them know these are my priorities this week. So
Mhm.
they know either I help Nadia clear out a path for her to get that done. If I can help in any way, they always offer to help, or they know where I'm at as well and how I'm
Yeah.
growing the business and what I'm working on, so that they feel that equal energy exchange, that we're all moving a piece here.
Right.
Right. So it's important to me to lead by example as well as a manager and a leader.
Mhm. Well, we'll schedule more time later because I think that sounds like a great use case for range. So I'm gonna get you and your team,
Interesting.
you and your team on range, and I know your team's small enough, so it'll definitely be in the free bucket. So
I love it.
yeah, this is great. I think just kind of shining a light on like what is managing up. And I mean, we didn't give a super structured like this is what it is, but I think just talking
Yeah.
about it, talking about what it might look like, some mindsets around managing up, I think hopefully will be useful to folks who are a bit, like kind of like, oh, giving feedback. We're always like,
Yeah. Hesitant. Hesitant.
yeah,
And that's the
hesitant.
thing. That's why I focus on mindset, because if you were to ask me what is managing up, you can
Hmm.
do an online search. It's a Google search away. That's
Right.
the reason why mindset is so beautiful in this, because I know you know coaching very well. So we know that all the best tips and tricks and the A through Z of managing up is out there. It's a
Yeah.
leadership book away. It's a management
People read the
course
books, but
away.
they're still
Yeah,
not
but
doing it.
if there is
Right?
something scary about actually doing it, then we have to look internal and see what might be my internal blocks from actually doing the external work.
Yeah.
So that's where it all goes down to in my book.
Yeah. Well, we'll link up your workshop and offerings as well in the show notes.
Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Nadia.
Thanks,
Thanks for joining
Jean.
me.
Yes. Bye.